In this episode, we talk about PB2, how to get your spouse to eat clean, and how to gain muscle without getting fat. Hey everyone, Dustin Lien here. Welcome to episode 3 of the Ask MuscleFeed show, where we answer your questions live here. So I am hot off of an NPC physique show last week, and didn't place exactly where I wanted to, but it went okay. Qualified for nationals, so I'm happy about that. So I got some really great pictures, just killer pictures. The photographer did a great job, so I'm just excited to have those and be able to compare them and see what I can do better for the next show. But other than that, just cruising right along. Jackie, you want to jump into questions?
Yes.
All right, what do we got?
Kelsey asks, what do you think about PB2?
So PB2, for those of you who don't know, is a peanut butter alternative. It's basically crushed peanuts, and so it's a powder form peanut butter. And so what I think about it is it's great. I've used it for a prep before quite a bit, and what's good about it is the nutritional facts. It's basically just crushed peanuts, a tiny bit of sugar, like I think there's 1 gram per 2 teaspoons or something or tablespoons, and then like a pinch of salt. So it's pretty much nothing but crushed peanuts. So it's great when you're trying to keep your carbs low and still get some healthy fats in. And so I think the real advantage though is using it as a substitute for your current peanut butter, because the nutritional stats are just so much better. It's easier to work in and fit your macros for the day. And it tastes pretty good too. It's not bad. I mean, don't eat it straight powder because that's disgusting, but you just mix a little bit of water in there and it becomes peanut butter. So it's good for throwing it in a shake, or I used to eat it on rice cakes, that kind of stuff. So big fan of PB2. What else we got?
Mark asks, how do you get your spouse to eat clean like you do?
If you are someone who is training for a competition or even just in general, you're trying to get in better shape, there's nothing more frustrating than a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or even friends for that matter eating like complete crap in front of you, around you, always. It makes it 10 times harder to stay disciplined yourself. So I feel the pain there, Mark, getting your spouse to eat clean. Lucky for me, mine actually does, but we've definitely both had seasons where I've eaten clean and she hasn't, and she's eaten clean and I haven't, but I think we've gotten in a groove lately. So I'm going to call my wife Jackie in for a second, and we will talk about how we get each other to eat clean. Enter my wife. This is Jackie. First appearance on the MuscleFeed show. So how do you get me to eat clean when I'm not doing so well? So after the show when I was binging, what did you do?
Well, I only did this because I know that your goal was to not binge too much afterward, because he didn't want to lose his progress so quickly. So I would remind you times like, you know, we had like a cheat meal afterward at IHOP and stuff, but then other times like that maybe we can make healthier choices on certain things, or especially at the grocery store, like just not buying certain things that, you know, he'd be like, oh, should I get this? And then it's like, oh no, I'll just sit and eat it in one sitting. So then
really
it's like, maybe let's just not buy that. But
that's a good point, because especially when you grocery shop together, like if one person buys a box of Pop-Tarts, as much as you might not want to, you'll probably eat one. So just not having it around the house at all helps. So ultimately, the main thing that helps to get your spouse eating cleaner like you do is just to, one, explain to them that it's more difficult for you, because I think just having that mutual respect of not buying certain things at the store, or not eating out as often, or whatever you need to do, can help. It helps you stay eating clean, and then it helps your spouse or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Helps them also to just start eating cleaner, maybe without even realizing it. But then once you start doing it and seeing results, then you both kind of tend to work in tandem, and it gets easier as you go, I think.
It was great for me when he was in like the final stages of cutting, because then we just weren't going out and we weren't there was no temptation to go reward ourselves with food or anything. And since I knew that and it was just completely off the plate, I ended up losing a good amount of weight with him when he was cutting, just because we were sort of on the same schedule and we weren't going out and weren't buying things that, you know, that could really ruin our diet. So it was, you know, but then once you were done, then we have to find another motivation, because now it's like, you know, we need a good motivation to keep eating clean. So I think just being on the same page about what your goals are, and if, like, my goal is to eat cleaner and to lose weight. So I think it helps when we talk about that beforehand.
Yeah, so I would say in order to get your spouse to eat cleaner, Mark, just sit down and have a conversation, first of all, in a normal, non-weird way, and explain that you're trying to eat well, and it would help if they would too. Or and if all else fails and your spouse just isn't going to do it, then just suck it up and be disciplined. Like, I mean, that's not answering the question, but basically that's what it comes down to, because
if your wife wants ice cream, then she gets ice cream.
yeah, you can't say no every time. So you have to know when to say, I'll take a bite, but then leave the rest for them to eat. So that's my long answer on that. All right. Thank you, Jackie. Disappear. Okay. So what is cool, huh? Well, cool depending on how the video editing comes out. But, okay, so thanks, Mark, for the question. Question was question 3. We got 3 questions this time, so moving on up from our 2-question usual.
5 different people asked, how do I put on muscle without gaining weight?
5 different people. All right. I like a condensed question. Okay. How do you put on, what is it? How do you put on muscle without getting fat?
It says without gaining weight, but I think
gaining weight.
Without
okay. That's probably what they mean. Okay,
fat,
so there is a very common misconception that in order to gain weight, in order to put on muscle, you need to bulk. I do bulk in quotations because that just is usually an excuse for people to binge eat and get fat. But you actually can put on muscle without gaining a bunch of fat. Really, you technically can do it without gaining any fat, but that requires such a high level of patience. A lot of people opt to not do it that way, because you can create a little bit more of an anabolic state within your body by holding a little bit of fat, because your body has a fuel source to use other than your muscle. If it gets past the carbs and past what's in your system, instead of eating away the proteins in your muscle, you have something there for it to feed off of. If your body fat percentage is 5% or under, you're pretty much just going to start eating away at your muscle if you're not doing your nutrition perfectly. So I'm just going to say this. In order to gain muscle without putting on a bunch of fat, without like getting noticeably fat or even, getting above 10% body fat, you can stay under that pretty easily and still put on muscle. So the way to do that is to, one, make sure your protein levels are at least at 1 gram per pound. Some people will say to go as high as 1.3 grams or 1.5 grams. If you're a really hard gainer, if you're just naturally really skinny, maybe do that. But really, that's just going to be more of a calorie thing than an exact protein thing. There's not any science at all that I've ever seen that says that having any more than 1 gram of protein per body pound is going to do anything better muscle gain than the 1 pound, the 1 gram. So just make sure you have that down, and then that's going to give your body enough. It's going to give your muscles enough protein to build on top of, and then make sure your calories are at a high enough point to where you're able to gain weight, because you have to think about it logically. If your caloric baseline is 2,500 calories and you're eating 2,300 calories because you're trying not to gain any weight, you're also not going to gain muscle, because your body's going to be eating itself because it's below your caloric baseline. So you need to have extra calories to create extra you. But what you don't want to do is push that limit so high that you're storing extra fat. So you're, for example, if the extra calories you're consuming are coming from carbs, the liver can only hold so much. That's where it's processed. That's where sugars are processed. So it only holds so much. So if you have too many carbs and it bleeds over that capacity level, that's when you start storing fat. So you can't just eat everything and expect it to not get fat. You will put on muscle for sure, and that's why a lot of people do their bulking, is because you will put on muscle, but you're also going to gain a lot of fat. So what you want to do is keep your calories slowly moving up. So I would say start with adding an extra 100 calories in per week, and to your regular. So if you're used to eating 2,500 calories and that keeps you in your exact state, raise it to 2,600, and then see how your body reacts to that. Then raise to 2,700. You basically want to eat as much as you can without starting to gain fat. So just make sure you're stepping on the scale, weighing your body fat percentage every time you get a chance, just to really dial in what your caloric intake needs to be to not get fat but still be gaining weight and gaining muscle. So hopefully that made sense and wasn't too scatterbrained, but that's more or less how you put on muscle without putting on all the extra fat. Okay. It almost like turned into a rant. But I just hate when people think that you have to get fat to gain muscle, because you just don't. That's just poor planning and poor execution, I think. I'm going to cut back in for a second. So I actually did have a client one time that in 8 weeks put on 10 pounds of muscle and lost 10 pounds of fat. So he stayed the exact same weight. So listen to what I'm saying. He stayed the exact same weight, but his body fat percentage went down, and his muscle percentage he was 10 pounds heavier with muscle, but because he also lost 10 pounds of fat, he stayed the same weight. I take some credit for that because I gave him a really good plan, but a lot of that was on him too for just executing the plan properly. You can have the best nutrition and workout plan in the world and right in front of you, but if you're lacking discipline to get to the gym and to eat the right foods and stick to it, you're not going to hit it. So it's possible. It's just very few people can execute well enough to make it happen. So just keep that in mind too. Thanks for everyone who submitted questions. Remember, you just tweet or Instagram using the hashtag #AskMuscleFeed, and we'll see those come through. You can do it anytime during the week, and we watch those feeds, and that's where we pull questions from. So make sure to do that. Any questions you have, fitness related at all, preferably, just hit that up, and just let's keep that moving. You know the drill. You keep feeding us questions, we'll feed you answers.